Namaste, viewers, and welcome to Home in the World with Gayatri ji, my better half. So, viewers, in this program, we have this informal but I hope far reaching and probing conversation around topics of great interest to just ourselves, of course, but also to the nation and to the world as a whole. But it's not just faffing, it's based on something that's been written. And once again, it's not the polemics that we normally see, whether it's on our channels or on YouTube. And I'm not saying, oh, this is my position on the Ram Mandir issue. This is my position on Cockroach Janata Party. No, we are not taking positions. We are not influencers in that sense. And we don't want anybody to follow us. But we want to create a deeper understanding of issues so that people can make up their own mind. So they say घर की बात घर में रहनी चाहिए, but normally what happens is घर में कई सारी चीजें discuss होती है. We are argumentative Indians, of course, and our discussions are meant in the national interest and, of course, in the interest of the younger generation and others who are curious, but who also want to know what the facts are, what the truth is, right? So it is like a global gurukul, and a gurukul, as you know, friends, always starts at home. It's the home of the guru and the guru's partner, his spouse, his wife, or the other way around. And that's where learning starts in India. So, with those words, welcome Gayatri ji once again. So, what is your query?
Thank you. When you were speaking, I was reminded of your X or earlier Twitter handle line. There's a truth to know and work to be done. So I think we are trying to do both. We are trying to understand the truth. And of course, there is work in terms of understanding, questioning, and having conversations like these, which hopefully are helpful not just for us, but for our viewers as well. So my question, which I asked in the previous episode, was given our history of colonization, rather double colonization, as you do mention in your latest book, Hindutva and Hind Swaraj, Histories Forgotten Doubles. So it's such and the residue of colonization is still there in every mind and every aspect of our life. So do you think the China model was even possible to implement, even a bit of it, given our such a complex history?
Yeah, exactly. But don't forget that the Chinese history has also been incredibly complex, right? And they had 100 years of humiliation, what they call 100 years of humiliation, where the Western powers essentially forced the Chinese emperor to, import opium, to destroy his own economy. It was a terrible period for them. And so partly the Chinese Revolution was in response to their own form of colonization. And of course, there are many amazing books on what happened in China. And I would certainly recommend the work of Frank Dicotter, who is now a fellow at the Stanford University's, think tank over there. And he's written several books on China, tetralogy, 5 books, in fact, 4 books plus an additional one on the whole Chinese Revolution. And his thesis is that the communists were only one small part of that ferment that was going on from the 20s onwards, when the empire or the old imperial system of China was breaking down, and different powers, the nationalists and Sun Yat-sen and others were rising and jockeying for power. Chiang Kai-shek, very important person. And the Chinese were only one of these different players, in the system. So, to answer your question, when you're emerging from a terrible history of exploitation, expropriation, in fact, even slaughter, forced conversions, vandalism, as in the Islamist phase, and then later, tremendous economic, you might say, blood sucking, if you use that word. What Britain did to India is just unimaginable. And of course, the great famine of Bengal, 2-3 million people died easily. So it's a terrible history. Now, usually what happens when you come out of this, is you become an authoritarian or a totalitarian state. Authoritarian means you're run by dictators, these strong men. And that's exactly what happened in Pakistan. It started as a democracy. Jinnah died, Liaquat Ali Khan, the prime minister, was assassinated. And one after one, all these military dictators took over. You had Ayub Khan, then Yahya Khan, then you had Ziaul Haq and Parvez Musharraf. And now you have the great so-called field marshal, some people call him the failed marshal, Mullah Munir, Asim Munir. And democracy is there only in name. It's a terrible situation. Look at Bangladesh. They've had so many coups, so many murders of their leaders, one after one, including the founder of the state, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Don't forget that the so-called father of India was also assassinated. Mahatma Gandhi by Nathuram Godse. So, in a sense, the founders of the three states, though Jinnah was not assassinated, but he died very soon after Pakistan was founded. He was ill and he died. But their prime minister, Liaquat Ali Khan, was assassinated. So, this is a sad history. And usually, what happens is some dictator takes over. So, there is that temptation. One side is authoritarianism, like you had fascists in Europe, in Italy, and to some extent in Germany, though the German Nazis were a strange mixture of fascists and socialists, interestingly. The Nazi party was a socialist party,
Yes.
believe it or not. So, fascism, authoritarianism on one side, totalitarianism. Totalitarianism is what? Is the Soviet Union, which starts off as a revolution. You kill everybody who is against you. They kill the entire royal family of Russia. Everybody was slaughtered. And they killed all the so-called aristocrats. So tremendous, slaughter happens in these revolutions. And in Mao's China, millions died. This is what Frank Dicotter has pointed out, right? Millions. I'm not talking about thousands or 3,000s or even 100,000 or even 3 million. According to Frank Dicotter, 40 million people died in the Great Leap Forward, in the Cultural Revolution, so-called Cultural Revolution. And all of this has now been well documented. So let's not forget that India could have also gone in one of these two directions, authoritarianism or totalitarianism. And in my view, the only reason we didn't go in either direction, the basic reason, is Mahatma Gandhi. Today we love to hate Gandhi, but the mass movement taught Indians the power of civil disobedience. We've seen it even now. It's like takht badal sakte hain, takht to taj ko hila sakte hain, that moral force of the people. Jan, not Jan Sadharan, but Jan Janardhan, So takhta palat ke liye you need a moral force. Maybe we'll have another episode, but
Yes.
you had Jayaprakash Narayan. I saw that with my own eyes. Anna Hazare, now Sonam Wangchuk sort of playing a similar role. But see, Gandhi taught Indians not to be afraid of power. So, and Subhash Chandra Bose, by the way, was a dictator. Please, let's understand. So, he was our version of the kind of, I don't want to use fascist, but a kind of, dictatorial, authoritarian, that Netaji, always in the army uniform. And on the other side, don't forget, Jawaharlal Nehru was a Fabian socialist. And Rajni Dutt founded the Communist Party of India. It was founded, some say in Tashkent, some say it was founded in India, whatever. And ironically, it was founded the same year as the great Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, 1925. See the two trajectories. So India could easily have become a communist country. In fact, India was a socialist country in many respects. And Mrs. Indira Gandhi, during the emergency, inserted the word socialist, right? Secular and socialist, through a constitution amendment, was introduced by force into our constitution. So we are, even today, technically we are a socialist republic, so to speak, but we are not, as you know. So the temptation to go, in either direction, but basically centralizing power, crushing dissent, ruling with force on either side. Totalitarianism means every aspect of society is controlled by the party, basically. So that's the Chinese way. And an authoritarian system is a strong man, like Saddam Hussein, or Maduro, whatever. All these, or Putin, Vladimir Putin or Putin is like a dictator, right? So these strong men, they control, or Muammar Gaddafi, you name it, there have been so many of these, and once they topple, nobody cares about them. So in India, we could have gone in either direction. The only reason we didn't is because we had very strong uh, institutions which were not controlled by the state, as I've already mentioned, the press, the so-called non-government sector, NGOs, schools, colleges, not entirely state-controlled, religious institutions, and a variety of other, samajik, systems in place, samitis, sabhas, going back to thousands of years. The idea of a village republic. So, and then chakka jam, anytime you don't like what your leaders are doing, what your rulers are doing, you do chakka jam. That means you block a road. Now, this isn't new. This has been going on for literally thousands of years. And even Aurangzeb, the most sort of tyrannical, the most horrible of, the Mughals and other, dictators, or call them what you will, who were completely insensitive. They couldn't care less about the people. Even they had to, in a way, bow down to the will of the people beyond a point. So, yes, we could have gone in that direction. Luckily, we didn't. And the temptation still remains, if not to become a military dictatorship, which Nehru was mortally afraid of. Now, this whole thing, as I said, the centralizing impulse, and then, all your other institutions, including universities, appointments, this, that, and the other, run by, a parallel organization, and then the government run by the party, which is also part of this parivar. So everything run by just one group of people, everything controlled by them. So that, in my view, is not good for India. And it's also, not a part of my understanding of how our civilization has grown and flourished. And I think you wanted to
Yeah,
ask me
I
about
think
Taiwan. You can ask that question again, yeah.
yes, you said Taiwan is a little different, and it's an interesting, uh, you know, uh, story as well. So, can you just complete that as well, that part?
Yeah. So that is that unfinished story, which is that when the communists took over, the nationalists, they fled to Taiwan, that the Chiang Kai-shek and his party, who were actually trying to control China. And there was a rebellion. And by the way, unfortunately, at that time, China was invaded by Japan. So the nationalists had to fight on all fronts. And in the end, they were overwhelmed by the communists, partly because the communists were supported by the Soviet Union. So it's a complicated story. And America was not strong enough to support the nationalists. Whatever happened, happened. But these nationalists fled to China and they never recognized this government. And the idea was one day we'll come back. And the Communist Party wants to take over Taiwan because they believe in one China. So, what I'm trying to say is that technically speaking, China is one country with two systems, and these two systems are actually in two different countries today. So, the hope or the calculation of many freedom loving people in China and outside, and certainly in Taiwan and elsewhere, the exiles, Chinese exiles abroad, is that one day the Communist Party rule will end or will collapse, and the nationalists or the freedom loving democratic people will come back, and China and Taiwan will be united, but as a great democracy. So we don't know if it'll ever happen, and if history is any judge. In Vietnam, actually, it went the other direction. The South, which was supposed to be democratic, that lost and was absorbed into the North. It's one country, it's run by communists, but it's reasonably free. I've been to Vietnam as well, and it's prospering, it's developing very, very rapidly. And of course, There are two Koreas, even as we speak. North Korea, as you know, is communist, but it's also dictatorship. So it's a combination of authoritarian and totalitarian. And South Korea is democratic. So the two systems persist, one nation divided, and maybe India, one civilization divided into several nations. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it comes to uh, the question of how are we I mean, like you mentioned that Chinese don't like competition and definitely don't like so-called democracy rising and progressing, and yet we in our Sanatan Dharma we always say that, you know, we we are not against the others. It's like, okay, you have your own thing, you do your own thing, we do our own thing, but it's not that you cannot exist or we deny your existence at all, and we want to annihilate you completely. So I think with that message, let's
Yes,
hope.
because in fact, I wanted to say that that applies to a political spectrum, you know.
Yes,
So if you say Congress Mukt Bharat, what does it mean? You know, you want to destroy everybody, only you will rule, and vice versa. If you want to say that, you know, a particular party or a particular leader, which is what they tried in Gujarat, should be delegitimated, denied a visa, never allowed. No, that's not democracy. So, and that's not Sanatan Dharma either. But by
exactly.
the way, there are some good aspects to China envy. Let's learn to be efficient. Let's learn to be
Yes,
hardworking. Let's learn to be patriotic like them. And by the way, and this is such a, I would say, provocative note to end on. Today we have debates on reservation and merit and so forth. I want to tell our viewers China, believe it or not, is a meritocracy. So everything is controlled by the Communist Party, yes, but the Communist Party within itself, you know, is a kind of meritocracy. People are competing. You said Chinese don't like competition. Yes and no. In other words, suppose they want to invent something new, like say new drones, they will fund like 10, 20 people, and these people will compete to death, and only the two best will survive. So the Chinese system is highly competitive, it's highly accountable, highly meritocratic. In other words, suppose you have political ambitions. You know, you start off, maybe you have a good start, whatever, you're a dynast of some sort. You're given a small ward or a small, you know, what they call council or whatever, you know, their canton, or they have their own divisions before you go to states and provinces to run as a mayor or whatever, and you're observed. You know, if you do well, then you rise. If you don't do well, if people complain about you, if you're corrupt, you just disappear. There is no tolerance in that system for corruption, though there is corruption, by the way. So it's very complicated at a higher level, but at a lower level, it is purely on merit. And Chinese, wow, their exams, their universities, they are so competitive, no reservations. In fact, they have coaching classes, and people used to get sick, just like in India. And then the party, the state, they banned these coaching classes because they were so exploitative. So, what I'm trying to say is China has zero tolerance for incompetence, corruption, inefficiency. It's a highly accountable society. And the last thing maybe we can end on is that the Chinese system, suppose you're leading an institution, okay? Suppose you are the head of, say, the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, okay? I can say so because I was. You are supposed to groom your successor. You're supposed to find somebody. You can't abandon your post and go. In India, it's the opposite. They kick you out, or you cling till the end. You don't want to give up. And worse, forget about grooming. You cut out all competition, you get rid of all rivals, and then after retirement, you're still clinging to power. So, you know, there are many things to learn from the Chinese. And a good, a healthy China envy would not be to envy their authoritarianism, their centralization, their one language, one leader, one party, that authoritarian, that top down, but rather their hard work, efficiency, patriotism, meritocracy, reverse engineering, you know, their smarts. There's so many things their beautiful, infrastructure, cleanliness. There's so much we can learn from the Chinese. And I, for one, would really like people to people contact. I want many Indians to learn Mandarin, to visit China, and to learn about Chinese society and civilization, which we don't do. Our focus is entirely on the West. And though most of our foreign secretaries have been China experts, Mandarin is not taught in our schools, which it should be. It's not taught in our universities. And heaven save our so called China experts. Our China centers are a complete. I was in JNU, we had two China centers, and oh, my great colleagues, I have respect for them. But the strategic thinking, where is it? There is a whole Institute of Chinese Studies. Nothing great has come out of some of these institutions. So we should have 20 institutions just study China. We should have Mandarin in Mothers International School as an elective. Anyhow, much to do and many conversations. Our conversations never end. And that's how it should be, I think. Couples and couple yoga is also based on uh, on such
Conversation.
exchanges and
Yes.
conversations.
And of course, not to mention the arguments, because we are argumentative Indians.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
So,
for joining us, viewers. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please join us for the next episode of Home in the World. We will look at another article or another portion or section of an already published article and discuss that. Maybe India's great US gripe, US grievance mongering, which is also part of that open article. Maybe. But it's your choice. It's your choice, Gayatri ji. And thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.